So as you can imagine, there are very many different official versions from the Iranian government of what has happened in the context of the Grace 1. First of all, they maintain that they're right to sell oil to whoever they wish, which they've maintained from the beginning of this incident back in July. Second, they say that they have sold the oil to not an EU sanctioned entity, in keeping with the undertakings provided to us, that they sold it to a private buyer in the Mediterranean, but they won't disclose who that private buyer is because of the US attempts to sanction their sales of oil. Look, as far as Gibraltar is concerned, it is hugely important that the Iranians should have kept to the written undertaking that they provided to Gibraltar and to the world of what would happen with that oil, because if they don't, frankly, they don't just let down Gibraltar, they let themselves down hugely, and the whole world will be able to see that Iran's even written word is not worth the note verbal paper on which it is written.
But this is a bit of a diplomatic get-out clause, isn't it? You know that there's every likelihood that whatever private company Iran has sold this oil to might have sold it on to Syria.
Well, that may or may not be the case, but EU sanctions don't stop the sale of oil to a person who is not Syria. If that person then sells it to Syria, there's the breach of the sanction. It's not in the first sale. But look, from Gibraltar's point of view, this was a very clear operation. There was credible evidence that the oil on the Grace 1 was going to be sold directly to the Syrians. It was in Gibraltar for the purpose of going to the Banyas refinery. And as Elliot Phillips, the leader of the opposition, said in Parliament, they supported the government, the GSD supported the government because we were doing the right thing to enforce EU sanctions when that boat was in British Gibraltar territorial waters. That was hugely important. I think people understand, most people understand, why it was so important that we acted when that vessel was in British Gibraltar territorial waters.
But surely the important thing here is that Syria doesn't get hold of that oil, and the reality is that you don't know, do you?
The important thing for the European Union when it established its sanctions was, and that includes us, that the Syrian regime should not have access to any economic resources. And Article 14 of the sanctions includes things like oil being an economic resource. We are the only ones in Europe who've acted. We acted at the right time when the vessel was in British Gibraltar territorial waters. We actually had no legal right to detain it any further once we had obtained that undertaking. And now we're told the oil was sold to a third party that is not an EU sanctioned entity. Job done as far as Gibraltar is concerned. Can we be expected to do more? Can Gibraltar, the smallest jurisdiction in the European Union, be expected to be the world's policeman and act like the world's superpower off the coast of Syria? I don't think anybody would be foolish enough or could be duped into thinking that that was our role.